flag. My uncle, President Kennedy, left us a legacy of peace and the hope of ending the arms race and winding down the Cold War. Those were the traditions of freedom, prosperity, and peace that my father, my uncle, and Martin Luther King Jr. were striving to protect and advance. In the half-century since their deaths, we've lost touch with that vision for our country. And I want to tell you right now that we can still restore that America, the America that almost was, and yet may be. But we have to start by being honest with ourselves. Neither my uncle nor my father would recognize the version of America that we have today. We become a nation of chronic illness, of violence, of loneliness, depression, and division, and poverty. Our great cities are becoming tent encampments, modern-day Hoovervilles filled with undocumented immigrants and dispossessed Americans and people living in their cars, plagued by mental illness and addiction and despair. Our border has come under the control of criminal drug cartels that traffic in desolation and fentanyl and in busloads of desperate human beings. Our children are drowning in a crisis of alienation, of dispossession, and complete disconnection from their communities. We've lost far more of our young people to drugs in the last decade than in the 20-year Vietnam War. We've printed 9 centuries worth of money in a little over a decade and spent $8 trillion on regime change wars. Those wars have made America less safe, our country less strong, and the world far less stable, while sending prices through the roof as our infrastructure falls apart. Tens of millions of young Americans no longer even dream of owning their own home. What happened to America, the land of opportunity, where you could be sure that if you worked hard and played by the rules, that you would have a decent life? All the new wealth of the last generation has gone to the billionaires and to transnational corporations, while our tattered middle class, our infrastructure, our industry have been hollowed out from the inside. Instead of promise, we've left our kids sick and drowning in debt. The public debt has gone from about $5 trillion under President George W. Bush to $34 trillion today, and U.S. household debt is at a record high of $17.3 trillion. If you include discouraged workers, our true unemployment rate is 23%. Young parents face housing, grocery, and childcare costs that are unaffordable. Too many Americans are living bleak and hopeless lives, dreading the one medical emergency or the car repair that will tip them over the edge into homelessness. We rank 40th globally in our people's health and wellness. Out of the richest countries in the world, the United States is 35th in child poverty rates, just above Mexico. We rank 36th in literacy and 45th in press freedom. We have one of the highest cancer rates in the world, and our life expectancy now ranks 59th, according to the World Bank. That's right behind Algeria, which spends less than 1/30th per capita of what we spend. But even these grim figures hide the full picture of our dire health crisis. We now have the worst health outcomes in the rich world, the highest maternal mortality rates, the highest number of gun deaths per capita, and the highest number of teen pregnancies. We lead the world in obesity and chronic disease. According to CDC, 60% of Americans have at least one chronic condition. When my uncle was president, only 6% of Americans had chronic disease. And all of these plights fall heaviest on our young people. 4 in 10 of them suffer depression, and half of them have considered suicide. 1 in 10 has anxiety. 1 in 10 has ADHD. 1 in 5 is obese. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We were once a free and thriving nation, the healthiest and strongest in the world. What we once were, we can be again. How do I know that? It's because everywhere I go in this country, I see a profound determination among Americans to heal. We might have become the sickest country on earth, but we also have the most ingenious healers, both inside and outside conventional medicine. We may have sky-high levels of depression and addiction, but we also have innovators who have opened up new frontiers in recovery. We have some of the world's most depleted agricultural soils, but also some of the world's most innovative and energetic regenerative farmers. We have serious economic problems, but we also have the brightest and most ambitious entrepreneurs. We face hunger and homelessness, and yet we meet it with the highest philanthropic rates in the world and bottomless kindness and compassion. We may be on the mat today, But we can be on our feet and happy and healthy and strong again with good leadership tomorrow. Our people and our system were built for resilience. And here's the most important thing I want to tell you about the state of our union. Our nation seems more divided than ever, but Americans everywhere want to heal that divide. Our nation has become artificially divided by political forces that can survive only when we, the people, are at war with each other. People are tired of being manipulated by fear. We learned that lesson during COVID. We recognize that the same techniques of manipulating fear are being used by elites today to corral us into voting for one political candidate or the other. Americans are tired of these dire warnings that to preserve democracy itself, you better vote for our guy. I can tell you that in every state of this union, people are rejecting fear-mongering. 80% of Americans say they don't want to be forced to choose in this election between the lesser of two evils. They're tired of voting against something or someone. I see it in the crowds of mixed Republicans and Democrats and independents who attend my rallies, that a growing number of Americans are rejecting divisiveness. They're ready to unite, to rebuild this country, and to fulfill the promise of the America of my youth. They're ready to vote for something and for someone they like, for someone who represents hope and healing, or someone with an inspiring vision for America's future, for a future that they can believe in. So that's the State of the Union that I want to bring you today. It's a nation that hungers to heal. It's a nation ready to face reality, to rebuild, to end the forever foreign wars, to clean out the corrupt Washington establishment, and to turn again toward peace, freedom, good health, and prosperity. When we unite in that vision, we're going to be unstoppable. Thank you, and God bless you.
National Convention for Independence, Christopher Life.
Good afternoon, everyone. As a husband and father, it's my duty to secure the best possible future for our children. And I have decisively broken away from the notion that the solutions we need could possibly emerge from the existing two-party system. How many of you feel similarly? 248 years ago, the founders of our nation declared independence from Britain because they believed they could better govern themselves independently. Today, we find ourselves at a similar historic choice point, driven by our obligation to our children and our love for our country. We must fully resign from both parties and affirm that independent leaders will steer our future. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time to renew the original promise of our republic. And the founders, through sacred vision and all-in sacrifice, equipped us with the tools to enact this historic moment of phase change through the voting system rather than any form of violence. And it's our time and our patriotic duty to leverage that capability to the fullest extent possible. The Independent National Convention is where thousands of modern patriots from across the nation converge to connect, learn, and fortify the U.S. independent movement, coming together to achieve our national goals. And we're so excited to announce that this year's Independent National Convention will be in Denver, Colorado, September 18th through 20th. We are also deeply honored to welcome Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be this year's keynote. Let's make some noise for what an incredible statesman, candidate, and leader he is. And with Nicole Shannon at his side, they are a formidable force of change, goodness, and positive influence to shape our best possible future. You are each invited to join us for INC 24 Denver this September. And as a token of appreciation for your contributions to Americans' independence movement, we're offering you a substantial discount if you want to scan this QR code today. This movement is about you. RFK's growing popularity and political influence are testaments to your readiness for change. You are the ones that are challenging the status quo of this existing hollow two-party system. You are saying that enough is enough and that it's time for a real reset. When you sign the petition for RFK's ballot access in Colorado, when you donate to his campaign, when you volunteer your time, when you spread the word, you are declaring to the world that the U.S. independents are here and ready to reclaim our nation from the corrupted systems we were born into. So now let's make some noise for your role you're playing in moving the nation in the right direction. We'd love to see you all at the Independent National Convention. You can come and talk to us in the back if you have any questions. And after the Independent National Convention, I think we're all on our way to the White House. Thank you. Together we rise.
All right, let's hear it. All right, let's hear it one more time for Christopher Life. Yeah, that's right. So what we're going to do, so here's the issue. Well, first of all, great job, Colorado, because the line is so long that we have to push back the start time because Colorado is showing that they want a third choice, that they believe in independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So thank you, Colorado. So what we're going to do is we're going to show, well, actually, no, we're going to play some music. Sorry about that. We're going to play some music. We're going to wait and let some more people in, and then we're going to get started. We're going to have some more people come up. So we'll keep you updated, but right now what we're going to do is we're going to play some music so we can let more people in. Sincerely, from the bottom of our hearts here on the campaign, thank you, Colorado. You have no idea. You have no idea how much it means. All the sleepless nights, the long travels, especially for the candidate working as hard as he is, to see crowds like this. When people say that nobody wants a third choice, you say that we do. We thank you. So we're going to play some music. We're going to make sure people get in here so we all can see independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And we'll get going here shortly. Thank you again. Hello, Colorado. So we're still waiting for people to come in, and this here is Jonathan Hiller. How many of you have seen the YouTube video where Jonathan explains the polls and how we can legitimately win this election? If you haven't seen it, go to our YouTube page, Team Kennedy 24, and look for this wonderful face. Yes, thank you, Jonathan. He also helps with a lot of the videos, and that's what we're going to do now. So something that we like to do is, we all know that chant that everybody hears, and it's in the background of the videos and different things like that. And it's, of course, the Bobby chant. So what we want to do while we have this time, and I mean this wonderful crowd, is we want to get audio and video of the Bobby chant that we can use in future videos on YouTube and Twitter and all these different things. Can we do that? All right, so this is the warm-up. I'm going to say, can we do that? I need you guys to get loud and say yes. Can we do that? Yes. There we go. That's what we're waiting for. So on the count of three, I'll help you out, and then I'll let you take over. We're going to do the Bobby chant, all right? 3. Oh, stand by.
We have done this in a few states, but I'm from Colorado, so please don't disappoint me.
So far, Vegas has been the one that's been really good. But I mean, this is, like I said earlier, this is the home of the Broncos. This is the home of the Rockies. This is the home of the Nuggets. So I know we can do better than Vegas. All right, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Bobby, Bobby. All right, great job. Yeah, that's right, let's hear it. So another one I want to do, if you want to get this one too, we could do another one. We got time. We got plenty of people coming in. So what I want to do is I'm going to split it right down the middle here, all right? And this side is going to say RFK. This side will say all the way. All right, can we do that? So I'm going to point. We're going to test real quick. So let's try this side. All right, now let's try this side. All right, so I'm going to point, and you guys, are you ready? Yep. You're recording? Yep. All right. For sure? You promise? No lens? Okay. All right, so I'm going to point, and we're going to get going. Hold your signs up. Get loud. We're going to use this, and you're going to be able to look at it and go, look, that's me right there. All right, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. So we're still letting people in. As you can see, we got a line. So what we're going to do is we're going to play some more music. We'll give you an update, or if we can think of another chant to get going here. But thank you so much, Colorado. We'll be right back.
each other. So when that happens in a family, it's really huge news, like everywhere. People who are close to you are much more resistant to hearing truths from you. I'm in a 12-step program, and they say you can't 12-step your own family because there's so much baggage in relationships that you kind of have to let somebody else tell them the truth. You know, I have a son who disagrees with me on vaccines, and I let him hold his own beliefs. I have to love him. The only thing that he can hear from me is, I love you. He can't hear the information that I give him. He can't hear. The worst thing that you can do if you're challenging a closely held orthodoxy is to assault them with facts, because they don't want to hear it. It actually makes them more resistant. It makes them dig in. My family members, many of them just plain disagree with me on issues, and they are entitled to their beliefs, and I respect their opinions on them, and I love them back. Is it too much to hope that we could have the same thing for our country? We have a polarization in this country today that is so toxic. When I talk to both Republican friends and Democratic friends, they talk about this division in almost apocalyptical terms. One of the principal missions of my presidency is going to be to end that division. If we want to meet our obligation as a generation, as a civilization, as a nation, which is to create communities for our children that provide them with the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us, we've got to start by protecting our environmental infrastructure, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the wildlife, the fisheries, the public lands, those things that are not reducible to private property, but by their nature are the property of all of us, the commons, the commonwealth, the landscapes, the waterways that connect us to the 10,000 generations of human beings that lived before there were laptops, and that ultimately connect us to God. And God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great books of those religions, through wise people, through art and music and literature and poetry, but nowhere with such detail and grace and color and joy as through creation. And when we destroy a species, when we destroy a special place, we're diminishing our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is, and what our own potential is as human beings. Father Martin once told me that the definition of sin is an injury to another human being or to God, to our relationship with God. And my children are going to grow up in a world where they will never see the kind of explosions of color from butterflies that I saw every time I walked into my garden. Because 80 or 90% of the butterflies are gone, the flying insects. They'll never hear the songbirds that I heard. They're not going to see that in their lifetime. They're unaware of it. And it's like God is a tapestry, and he's talking to us from all of these different vectors, and we're pulling threads out of that capacity, and it is such a crime against our children. And I think we deserve a president in this country who cares about these things and who talks about these things to the American people. Both President Trump and President Biden like to boast about the prosperity that they brought to our country, but in crisscrossing America myself, I'm not seeing evidence of that prosperity. Instead, I'm seeing an America that I never thought that I'd witness. I'm seeing these giant disparities in wealth where most Americans are living on the precipice of desperation. In fact, the average income in this country is now $5,000 less than the basic cost of living. And 35% of Americans are not making enough money to pay for basic human needs. That means transportation, food, and housing. What that means is that they have to make impossible choices every day of their lives. American parents today all across across our country are sitting in their living room and listening to a baby cry in the room next door and having to wonder whether that baby is $30 sick or $200 or $500 sick before they bring them to a hospital. They're choosing between medicine and food and gasoline and rent. And in order to bridge that gap between their income and their needs, Americans are increasingly relying on their credit cards. We now have the greatest credit card debt in America's history. Credit card debt is $300 billion more than when President Trump took his oath of office. And the average interest rate on that credit card debt is around 22%. When the mafia does that, they call it loan sharking. When banks do it, they just call it interest. If we're doing so well, then why is it today that 57% of Americans could not put their hands on $1,000 in order to pay for an emergency? And for the first time in American history, most Americans, in fact, 2/3 of us, believe that our children will be worse off than we are today. For most Americans, the American dream has turned into an American nightmare. And whatever graphs and data and statistics that government officials use to try to gaslight us into believing that everything is hunky-dory, reality is written across this country on the plywood that is boarding up all of these closed businesses from Main Street to Union Square in San Francisco, and it's etched on the faces of the mothers and fathers who gather weekly at their kitchen table to go through the bills and try to figure out how in the world they're going to make their ends meet. And that kitchen table math seems a lot more reliable than the sunny economic projections that we're getting from our elected officials of both political parties in the White House. Because every American family knows in its bones that these tales of a booming economy don't add up. The last two administrations, like several of the administrations that preceded them, have continued to adopt policies that favor Wall Street and tech billionaires and military contractors over the American middle class. Those interests are strip mining America of its equity, of its wealth, of its salaries, and ultimately of our democracy. And both President Trump and President Biden are now running for re-election based upon these economic choices. And what that means is that if either of them get elected, you can expect more of the same. We seem to have plenty of money for all the bank bailouts and the foreign wars, but food stamps for ordinary Americans are being cut by 90%, and teachers across the country are paying for school supplies out of their own pocket. It's time that Americans got a president who cared about their economy and not the war economy and the bank economy and the finance economy and the Wall Street economy, and not the theoretical economy on the charts and graphs. Over the coming weeks, I'll be releasing an economic plan that focuses on ending this corrupt merger between state and corporate power that has made the 6 essential expenses unaffordable for most Americans. And those essential expenses are housing, food, childcare, utility bills, commuting to work, and getting the medical care that you need to survive. I want every American to know that you are not alone in this crisis. I want you to know that I'm going to be a president who's going to be thinking about solving your economic problems every day that I'm in the White House. The government created these problems, and you deserve a government that is going to solve them. Let's take up that call from 60 years ago and ask Americans, all of us, to re-examine our attitude. We have been immersed in a foreign policy discourse that is all about adversaries and threats and allies and enemies and domination. We've become addicted to comic book good versus evil narratives that erase complexity and blind us to the legitimate motives and the legitimate cultural and economic concerns and the legitimate security concerns of other peoples and other nations. We have internalized and institutionalized a reflex of violence as the response for any and all crises. Everything becomes a war. War on drugs, the war on terror, war on cancer, war on climate change. This way of thinking predisposes us to wage endless wars abroad, wars and coups and bombs and drones and regime change operations and support for paramilitaries and juntas and dictators. None of this has made us safer, and none of it has burnished our leadership or our moral authority. But more importantly, we must ask ourselves, is this really who we are? Is this what we want to be? Is that what Americans' founders envisioned? Is it any wonder that as America has waged violence throughout the world, violence has overtaken us in our own nation? It has not come as an invasion. It has come from within. Our bombs, our drones, our armies are incapable of stopping the gun violence on our streets and schools or domestic violence in our homes. Waging endless wars abroad, we have neglected the foundation of our own well-being. We have a decaying economic infrastructure. We have a demoralized people and a despairing people. We have toxins in our air and our soil and our water. We have deteriorating mental and physical health. These are the wages of war. What will be the wages of peace? If I have not significantly dropped the level of chronic disease in our children by the end of my first term, I do not want you to reelect me. We have the sickest generation in American history. We have the sickest children on earth in this country. We spend more on healthcare by far than any other country, and we have the worst health outcomes. We spend $4.3 trillion annually on health, and about 84% of that goes to treating chronic disease. Now, why is that? Because America has the highest chronic disease burden in the world. We didn't always. In 1940s, 50s, and 60s, we had a really healthy population. We had only 6% of our citizens or children had chronic disease. By 2006, it was 54%. And by chronic disease, what do I mean? I mean obesity, neurological diseases, neurodevelopmental, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette's syndrome, ASD, and autism. Autism went from 1 in every 10,000 in my generation to 1 in every 34 kids today. This epidemic is real. It is not the result of changing diagnostic criteria. It is not the result of better recognition. It is an epidemic. And why aren't we asking the question? What happened? This is crippling to the middle class in this country. And we need to figure out what it is. And I can tell you this. When I am the President of the United States, I am going to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. And if I have not significantly dropped the level of chronic disease in our children by the end of my first term, I do not want you to reelect me. People ask me, what's the most important thing that we can do to protect our environment? I've always said the same thing, and that's encourage free market capitalism. A true free market promotes efficiency. And efficiency means the elimination of waste. And pollution is waste. In a true free market, you can't make yourself rich without making your neighbors rich and without enriching your community. But what polluters do is they make themselves rich by making everybody else poor. They raise standards of living for themselves by lowering quality of life for the rest of us. You show me a polluter, I'll show you a fat cat using political clout to escape the discipline of the free market and force the public to pay their production costs. And that includes the cost of cleaning up after yourself, which was a lesson that we were all supposed to have learned in kindergarten. I brought hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits against people who were contaminating our environment, poisoning our children, etc. And I told people during all that period, don't call me an environmentalist. Call me a free marketeer. I'm going out into the marketplace and I'm catching the cheaters.
Member and advisor to the candidate, Theo Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen, independent voters and independent thinkers, I bring you greetings as a proud former member of the Democratic Party. And I say that to say this simple thing. I did not leave the Democrats left me. They left me standing, holding my values, while they went and pursued the values of their donor class. They went around, right, because we all here together. I know that I got some former Democrats in the audience right now. But here's what I know. I don't recognize that party anymore. The party that was supposed to represent the little guy, the party that was supposed to represent the working class, I don't recognize these black vote-abandoning pharmaceutical company lackeys anymore. I don't know who they are. How are you going to have democracy implied in your name and then stop democracy from happening by preventing a whole Kennedy from participating in the primary? Not only have their actions been undemocratic, but they've been flat out un-American. How many of y'all would consider yourselves a patriot? How many consider yourselves a patriot? You know, as I look at what this campaign stands for, and I think about this divided, polarized climate, I think about the best patriot that I ever knew. My grandfather, Theobald Wilson, who was a Tuskegee Airman, one of the first black men to fly. I think about my grandfather's example of patriotism, and I wonder what he would say in this divided climate, with half of the country saying that America's narrative begins at 1619 and the other half saying that it begins in 1776. What do you think my grandfather would say?
1776!
He would say it's both. He would say it's both. Because on one hand, as a Tuskegee Airman, he wrote about how when he was liberating folks in Nazi Germany, he saw Nazi POWs treated better than him on the Air Force bases. He saw how he had to fight racism on two fronts, both against the Nazis and against his own countrymen. But on the other hand, my grandfather saw 1776. He saw the example and the dream of America keeping people alive, fighting against the lash of fascism in Europe. That's what he saw. And one thing he understood, thank you, one thing he understood is that when we talk about what needs to be done with America, he saw its shortcomings, and he saw that the reason he put his hand on his heart and the reason why he stood for the national anthem is following the words, a more perfect union. A more perfect union. The fact that saying that this country has more improvements to make doesn't mean that you don't love what we stand for in our highest ideals, following our better angels. And by the way, being the grandson of a Tuskegee Airman, you have to learn everything associated with the word Tuskegee. Everything. So how do you think I felt when I watched the world shut down and the people who were supposed to be my allies in 2020 burned down the world for me, saying that my life mattered in 2021? Calling me an anti-vaxxer and conspiracy theorist because I said the same misgivings I have about police institutions, I have about Big Pharma too. I saw the world shut down. I saw the black community lose 41% of black-owned businesses. I saw businesses within my own family lose 30 years of equity never to return. They cannot build that over again. And I remember in the summer of 2020, finding myself at the Capitol steps of Colorado, and I'm telling y'all, this was George Floyd's summer, so it was hot, okay? A lot of stuff was going on that summer. On one side, everybody fighting for the movement for black lives, but on the other side, folks were trying to fight the passage of SB 163, or should we say pass SB 163, to prevent vaccine mandates to happening to adults, which they told us was conspiracy theory. Now, I happened to be on the steps of the Capitol, and this guy walks up. He got a lot to say, but he had a scratchy voice. I said, what's up with my man's voice? What's going on with his voice, you know? And I'll tell you, he may have had a shaky voice, but what he had to say was rock solid. His name was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And what he said made a lot of sense to me, because at the time we were both Democrats. And, we had some growing to do. But what he said was that liberals, we do not accept Big Tobacco's narrative of tobacco safety. We don't accept Big Oil's narrative of fossil fuel safety, but somehow we accept Big Pharma's narrative carte blanche, no questions asked. How is that? That's not what we do. We became unexpected allies in the fight against creating a two-tiered society of jabbed and unjabbed. As the descendant of those who were enslaved, I have the right to say I am not for any kind of jab, Jim Crow action. That's not what we do. That's not what we do. And so, when I got pulled into the campaign, I didn't know what was going to happen, y'all. I got called out to Hyannisport, and I don't know, I'm in the Kennedy compound, and everything is owned by the Kennedys. It's amazing, right? You don't know how big this is going to be. But one thing I can tell you, the people who knew that something was wrong when corporations controlled our government would not be silenced, and this campaign is the retribution of the people, unequivocally. And let me tell you something about being a part of an independent campaign. You will not see eye to eye on everything. It is impossible. There are things that Bobby and I disagree on. But this is not like any other campaign, where the people therein are expected to be just mouthpieces of the folks in charge. This ain't a praise dear leader kind of situation. I took my disagreements to Bobby, and you know what he did? He listened. He listened. This is huge. Because in an independent campaign like this one, of this size, you are going to have to sit across the table and hammer out agreements, Mazel tov, my brother, and hammer out agreements with people who you would have deal-breaking disagreements with. And you got to sit there like adults, be grown-ups, and figure out a path forward. And the one who sets the tone for that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Listen, good folks, I'm independent enough to understand why folks might want to support other candidates. I get it, right? I got nothing but love and respect for my brother Cornel West. I appreciate him. He is my elder. I got love and respect for Jill Stein. I voted for her in 2012 when I could not any longer stand Obama's drone policy. And I have read their platforms as a policy advisor, and I can say that I agree with a lot of their points. I like the what, but there is no how. When it comes to the how and the way forward, Bobby is better. He's actually got the details. And one thing that I can say about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., getting to know him as a man, getting to know him as a person, folks ask me, is he really as good as he seems like he is? No, he's better. He's better. As an individual, I can tell you that Bobby will not make a promise that he can't keep if he can't see a path forward strategically to make it happen. And it may disappoint some folks, but as a guy, I gotta agree with his integrity. How about that? Integrity in a leader. Listen, there are voters who still agree with Joe Biden and them, and if he canceled your student debt, okay, I understand he canceled the student debt of some folks in my family. We can do that too, but anyway, we can cancel student debt. There are folks who agree with Donald Trump's stance on economic nationalism and putting America first economically. May not agree with how he wants to get there, but I do agree that that is a stance. Thank you. I'm getting a wrap-up cue. But one thing I will say is this. As long as you vote for either side of this duopoly, there was no way to vote against Big Pharma capture. There's no way to vote against Citizens United. There was no way to vote against the interests of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street buying up these homes, making life unaffordable for millennials and Gen Z. As long as you vote for the two-party system, there is no vote against the war machine that is consuming American resources and lives across the world. But if you want to vote for the end of the chronic disease epidemic, if you want to vote for structural community investment for the black community, the end to black maternal health care crisis, if you want to vote for possibly the best darn environmental president that this nation has ever seen, if you want to vote for a future that works economically where our institutions are no longer captured by crony capitalists, and there was one man, one vote, one voice, saying what the people need to hear and will do what the people need done, and that voice is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for Theo Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Colorado State Director for Team Kennedy, Isaac James.
Hello, everybody. Can I get a shout out for Colorado? One more time, I can't hear you. Can I get a shout out for Colorado? Yeah. All right. Guys, when I was a young man, I had the pleasure to serve in my beloved Marine Corps. And over the years, as an old man, I've had the pleasure to serve for Bobby Kennedy. And guys, it's an absolute pleasure to see all of you guys here to support Bobby. And let me get a shout out for all of you people that are supporting Bobby Kennedy. Let's go. All right. I got some great news for you guys, okay? By tomorrow morning, we will have 35% of the petitions signed for Bobby Kennedy to get on the ballot in Colorado. All right? That's because of you people. Everyone here, okay, who's done this. And and the reason we need this is because we need him on the CNN debate, guys. And if you all right, we need him on the CNN debate. The faster, the better. And if you have not signed the petition, please go in the corner over there and sign that petition, all right, to get him on the ballot, all right? And I also want to shout out to all the volunteers who have dedicated all this time, all right? Here's to all those volunteers. All right? And I want to thank all of you for everything you guys do, but we need more. We need more, because we are going to win this state, all right? As of right now, this is one of the biggest rallies in the country. I don't know if you know that. That's all because of you guys, all right? All right? To help us, guys, we need you to go to RFK Activate. You can go to the Apple Store and download RFK Activate and get involved, okay? We need supporters throughout the state, all right? And one last thing, guys. One of my volunteers, I was talking to her outside, and she said something to me. She said, you know what? Her name's Sarah Hall. Sarah Hall said, you know what? I haven't been involved in campaigns because I've seen the corruption. She goes, but for the first time, I want to be on the right side of history. Yeah. All right? I mean, who wants to be on the right side of history? Yeah. Yeah. You know? And here's something interesting, okay? We don't need a president that wants to take us to 1950, okay? We don't need a president that wants to maintain the status quo, okay? We need a president for the 21st century, all right? That's Bobby. Last night I heard Bobby talk about AI for 20 minutes. Do you think Trump can talk about AI for 20 minutes? All right? Can Biden talk about AI for 20 minutes? All right? You know, I've heard him talk about technology, all right? Do you think any of those guys can talk about technology in general for 20 minutes? No, all right? Can any of them talk about healthcare and pharmaceuticals? No, all right? Can any of them talk about the environment? No, all right? I mean, I want to ask you, are you guys ready for a 21st century president? Yeah. I need that. One more time. A 21st century president. Yeah. Okay? And we are going to win Colorado. All right? Thank you.
Let's have another round of applause for Isaac James. Colorado, please welcome the author of the soon-to-be-released book, Raising the Inner Child, Dr. Simon Ahuja.
Good afternoon. How are we all doing today? Are we excited or are we excited? Well, I am super pumped to be here, creating a revolution right alongside of you. You know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing us as a bunch of small cogwheels that are churning the greater cogwheel of revolution. A revolution that is based in truth and love and companionship. We are unstoppable. As I was preparing for this speech, I was listening to a song, and one of the verses is so fitting, and I would like to share that with you. It says, "The Creator has sent her very best warriors." I would like to share a little bit of my background. I am a family practice physician who was trained in conventional medicine. I also grew up in India for the first 12 years of my life, so I'm well aware of the power of alternative medicine. And when I started going to medical school, of course, we were taught biochemistry, physiology, all the big subjects with complicated names. But when it came to disease management, such as diabetes, all I had to do was prescribe a drug. We were not taught anything about nutrition or herbalism. That has got to change. Unfortunately, I had bought into the pill theory until one day I was in the emergency room and I saw a patient who had recently migrated from Africa, and she was in a diabetic crisis. Well, she hadn't taken her herb that she was taking when she was in Africa because she didn't have access to that. So as I walked in, a little arrogant, saying, "Well, how come you didn't take your medicine?" And I loved her response. She was kind, yet unapologetic at the same time, telling me she didn't have access to the medicine that had taken care of her diabetes while she was living in Africa. That hit me like a ton of bricks. It showed me that her being a lay person without any education in medicine knew more about nutrition than I did as a doctor. What a shame. It is a shame for our physicians who are not taught. It is a shame for our country. We need to be taught better. So what I say, and I think you guys will agree with me, our health is no longer negotiable. We need to bring a health care reform with proper education of the physicians. We need to bring integrity and humanity back into medicine. We need to bring the art back into medicine. And you know, we are so grateful and blessed to have a candidate who believes in true health and transparency. So let's vote for Robert Kennedy Jr. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage former member of the Pussycat Dolls, Jessica Sutta.
I'll finish it for you. It's Sutta like butter. How you doing, Denver? I'm so honored to be here. You guys excited to hear from Bobby? All right. Well, what? Win very soon. I'll keep this really short, I promise. I'm not going to bore you guys to death. Really quick, former Pussycat Doll, vaccine injury advocate. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hate to dampen the mood, but I was severely injured by the COVID Moderna vaccine. It changed my life. I know, right? We need to get that off the market. I spoke to Nicole Shanahan last week, and she said, I can't believe it's still on the market. I was like, that's why we have to get you guys in office, to get it off the market, out of our bodies. We have the choice to what we put in our bodies, right? Being in the industry, of course, it's a very taboo thing to speak out. And as I was watching all my industry friends remain silent, I thought it was so incredibly cruel that they didn't say anything. How could you be this sick and not stop this from happening to anyone else? Disgusting. When does humanity come above the career? So I choose humanity. I'm going to keep it really short. I'm going to leave you with this. It's all about we the people, right? We the people are going to get this man in office. Am I right? And to the people out there giving those disgusting letters of the worms and all the propaganda and all the smear campaigns, I have one word for you. You're not going to win. Don't ever underestimate the power of the people. Thank you so much.
Colorado, please welcome Team Kennedy member Rob Lucero.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. I'm not the Robert you're waiting for, but he's coming. So thank you for having me. My name is Rob Lucero. I'm honored to be the chair of Viva Kennedy for the campaign Viva Kennedy 24. Thank you. As you might know, Viva Kennedy is very historic in terms of this campaign and what it harkens back to. And I actually get to say that the same gentleman that introduced Bobby Kennedy Sr. to Cesar Chavez is the same gentleman that introduced me to Bobby Jr. in 2018. Yeah, the late legendary leader Paul Schrade from the UAW. We had an event on Cesar Chavez's birthday at Union Station in Los Angeles, my hometown. And you can watch the speech that Bobby gave there on our website, which is a tremendous survey of this history. I just wanted to share a couple of quick thoughts with you because you're on the verge of petitioning to get Bobby on the ballot here. You've already started it. We have essentially a drumbeat that no one really expected of victories with getting on the ballot in California, submitting more than twice the number of signatures in Texas to get on the ballot in Texas. And as Bobby has already said, we are on the verge of securing enough signatures in New York. So we have achieved what no one thought we could do, and we've just begun. Last point I want to make to you is, as the director of Viva Kennedy and our Latino outreach, if you don't know, among minorities, Black and Latino voters in particular, Bobby Kennedy is polling way higher than the other two we won't mention. More and more, there are articles talking about an X factor in the Latino vote. So I think we're in for a big surprise, and it gets to the question of what are they really afraid of? They're afraid that the energy that's been pent up since the tragedies of the 1960s, the political failures of the 70s and 80s, the shortcomings of the Democratic Party over the last 20 to 30 years, and the fact that Mr. Trump took over a moribund party in the case of the Republican Party, we're now at a place where there's a tidal wave, a tsunami is about to hit that can put Bobby Kennedy into the White House. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I'll just make one more pitch. It's Viva Kennedy. You can reach us at viva@teamkennedy to help us do our outreach, whether in Colorado or other states. We're going to get the word out, and I can tell you that the highest levels of the organizations that usually turn out to vote for the Democrats are talking to us about, being behind Bobby this year. So thank you all very much.
Colorado, get loud for Communications Director for Team Kennedy, Del Bigtree.
Hello, Colorado! You know, this is my hometown. I said, Bobby, when you come to Colorado, they're going to show up. You guys have been waiting for a very long time. I want to thank you all for coming out. I'm the last speaker holding up Bobby. He's sitting in the wings right now. I just want to tell you a quick story, a real Colorado story. We had some events up in Aspen over the Christmas holiday, and I thought, wow, maybe I could get some skiing in and work and do all of that. And I said, Bobby, we got to hook up on the mountain. You know, I knew he grew up skiing. I mean, they're the Kennedys. We know about it. But I grew up skiing, too, and I felt like this is my way to show him I got it, you know? So we wait. You know, he said, well, meet me at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to get up for a couple hours. I hop in the gondola with him, and he's sitting in the gondola. And he's like, do you have one of these apps? It actually, like, shows all the runs you did today and how fast you went. And he shows it to me, and I see that his top speed is 59.6 miles per hour. Swear to God. Now, those of you that ski, I'm a hot dogger. I'm a tree skier. I don't think I've ever gone 59 miles an hour in my life. But this is the type of sacrifice you got to make when you're going to work for Robert Kennedy Jr. So we did it. We hit the mountain somewhere around 60 miles per hour, and I'm here, and I'm happy to be alive to tell it. I mean, think about that. A president that can do, I don't know, 25, 30 pull-ups? Can ski at about 60 miles an hour, can catch a wave anywhere in the ocean, or we could have people that can barely walk or eat McDonald's all day, every day. It's just how we want to represent ourselves here in the United States of America. Now, when I think of growing up, you know, my mom used to take me out to Rocky Flats to protest that nuclear waste dump out there. I grew up protesting, fighting for the environment. And there was a hero we talked about a lot, a lawyer that wasn't just in government talking and saying they were going to do something about it, but was suing Exxon and suing the USDA and suing the electric companies GE to protect our rivers, to protect our oceans. This guy was a hero of mine growing up. And it's really an honor, and I just feel so incredibly blessed to now be working as the Director of Communications for that very same lawyer, that warrior for our environment, that reason we still breathe air, that cares about our water, cares about our food supply, cares about what's actually being injected into us, Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, real quick, because so many of you out there have been used to calling me anti-vaxxers, especially the press crew back there, I want to say something. If you've been watching the news this week, have you noticed the whole conversation is changing? Just yesterday, former CDC head Robert Redfield admitted to Chris Cuomo, I always knew this vaccine was going to have side effects, but no one would let me talk. They wouldn't listen to me, and we couldn't get the word out, and they pushed that vaccine. He said, in all honesty, no one under the age of 50 really needed to get that vaccine. Tell that now to all the kids that are suffering from myocarditis, pericarditis, the known side effect of swelling their hearts permanently for the rest of their lives. And then just last week, one of the heads of the pandemic task force, Deborah Birx, said, yeah, it's true, vaccine injuries do happen. She was saying it because the New York Times had said for decades there's no such thing as vaccine injury, finally admitted to the thousands of injuries happening across this country, and those are the ones being reported. And Deborah Birx said, you know, we've always known that vaccines carry some of the same side effects as the viruses themselves. Only difference is when you're getting a vaccine, everybody's getting it. There's no random selection. And then how about mutating the virus and making a Frankenvirus, which is what they did with this vaccines. You know that? They took the mRNA technology, they took the mRNA from the spike protein, which is the most dangerous part of the COVID virus, and then they said, well, here's the problem in a vaccine. If we inject it as is, the immune system kills it too fast to create any antibodies. So they added pseudouridine so that deadly spike protein would last longer in the body. Not 10 minutes, not 20 minutes, not an hour, but everything we see, 30 days, 60 days. You're injecting a Frankenvirus that lasts longer than the natural virus ever did. And wow, we're shocked people are now being injured. And now the head of the CDC and the head of our COVID task force are taking the airwaves to say, yeah, we kind of always knew that, when we used our President of the United States to force you to take it. How crazy is that? Now, I want to say one thing because I know there's a lot of people that are just waking up to this issue. And they'll say, well, Del, the vaccine issue is scary for people. We don't understand where Bobby's at. He's really where everyone is at now. Vaccine injury is real, like Jessica Sutter just told you. It happens. And we should be studying the group that are being injured. The NIH should be invested in it to make sure that never happens to anyone else ever again. But more importantly than anything, Bobby Kennedy's never going to take anyone's vaccines away. You're allowed to do what you want. This is a free country. But it's a country where we should always have choice, especially when it comes to our bodies. And I want you to think about this notion right now. Did you know that less than 10% of Americans that are being told by the CDC that qualify for the last booster of COVID, which I believe is shot number 9, so effective, really great product, less than 10% are taking that booster shot. That means 90% of the people that once believed in this vaccine program are rejecting the CDC's recommendation. Welcome to the story. And so I say this to all the press and everyone else out there. Do you want to live in a country where your president, like Joe Biden, forces you to take that 9th booster shot or you lose your job the same way he did with the first vaccine? I think you want the choice. And that choice is obvious. We need a leader that does not rush pharmaceutical products onto the planet, brag about it, watch people get injured, force people to take it, lock down our government, lock down our jobs, lock down our nation, all to find out from Tony Fauci just weeks ago, yeah, that social distancing thing that shut your lives down and destroyed your lives, it just kind of appeared. There was no science whatsoever. I was saying that on the high wire. Robert Kennedy Jr. was saying that at CHD, and we were called conspiracy theorists for saying it. And now that we're being proven right by every single reporter in the world that's looking at it, they still call us conspiracy theorists. So apparently, even when you're right, you're still a conspiracy theorist. Well, we'll take it. Because we want a leader that doesn't care what name you call him. We want a leader that tells you the truth, even though Robert Redfield is afraid to do it. We want a leader that says, this is not how you should be treated as Americans. You have a right to choose. You have a right to be free. You have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I wish all of you could spend one day in my shoes, walking with one of the most beautiful souls that has ever decided to run for the leader of the free world. I'm telling you, he's the real deal. He's a man. People will say he was a myth. He's definitely a legend. Are you guys ready to declare your independence? Then let's do this! Bobby! 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 Bobby!
This is a day of affirmation, a celebration of liberty. We stand here in the name of freedom. We are committed to peaceful and nonviolent change. We must recognize the full human equality of all of our people, not just to those of a particular religion, not just to those of a particular race, not just to the wealthy, but to all of the people. We must do it for the single and fundamental reason that it is the right thing to do.
A new twist this morning for the country's most famous political dynasty.
RFK Jr. plans
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. commences the presidential race
October 9th in the state of
that it's time to heal a divided nation and return the power to the people.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
We are told today that our nation is hopelessly divided. But I found something different as I travel this country. I have witnessed an upwelling of optimism that I've never seen before. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way. And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party and from all other political parties. I haven't made this decision lightly. It's very painful for me to let go of the party of my uncles, my father, my grandfather, and both of my great-grandfathers, but my sacrifice is nothing compared to the risk our founding fathers took when they signed the Declaration of Independence 247 years ago. They knew that if their revolution failed, every last one of them would be hanged. They chose to place everything on the line. When John Adams put his pen down after adding his signature to the Declaration, he turned to those present and he said to them, sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. From this day on, I am with my country. I'm going to make that same pledge to you today so that I can stand before you, as every leader should stand before you, free of partisan allegiance, free from the backroom deals, a servant only to my conscience, to my Creator, and to you. Every president enters office promising to unite the nation and to work with people from the other party across the aisle. None of them ever does it. They can't. They're already chosen a side. Well, I'm not going to have that problem. I'm going to build coalitions from both sides of the aisle. And except for the small minority of public officials who are actually corrupt, I'm going to tell you this secret. They too want liberation from the system that has captured them. And isn't that ultimately what we all want? Liberation from a system that robs us of our wealth, our health, our hope, our patriotism, our ideals, our freedoms, and ultimately our sense of ourselves as a good and capable people. Is healing our divided nation possible? Let's go take back our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
I am a real American, fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American, fight for what's right, fight for your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the next president of the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Thank you all very much. I'm gonna let, can we turn off the, hey Jimmy, can we turn off the music? Thank you very much. Thank you, Colorado. I want to introduce you before we go on to my son Finn, who spent a lot of his youth in Colorado as a competitive skier. He lived for several years in Frisco and Breckenridge and all of the other ski areas. And I asked him to come out here. He was very worried I was going to make him speak, but I'm not going to. But anyway, thank you, Finn, for being here. My daughter, Kik, I think, is also here. I want to thank all of you for coming out here today. The crowd was so big, we could not get it in the building. And I want to thank all the speakers who came up here, who agreed. A lot of them agreed to speak at the last minute while we were wanding the crowd inside. So I want to thank all of them for standing up at the last minute to talk to you. And I most of all want to thank all the many volunteers in Colorado who are getting signatures for us. The window for signatures in Colorado opened 2 days ago. Yesterday we got over 1,000 signatures. We need to get 12,500 to qualify in the state. The state has unusual rules because we have to get 1,500 from each of the 8 congressional districts. We're well on our way to doing that. We will have, within 2 weeks, we'll have over 20,000, so almost double what we need. And a lot of people, we were told by the pundits at the beginning and for month after month for the last year, and we would never be able to get on the ballot because they've made it so hard that nobody has ever done it before as an independent candidate. Last week, we got on in Texas, which is the hardest state. And we are on the ballot in 7 or 8 states right now. We have enough signatures for another 7 more. We're not turning those signatures in because the DNC and RNC are going to go through every signature and try to disqualify them. Oh, yeah. And so we're trying to narrow the window of time that they have to do that. But you know, you've heard there's now going to be a presidential debate, right? And you know, we have 3 big political demographics in this country. The Democrats represent 27% of Americans. The Republicans, self-identified, represent 27%, and the independents represent 43%. Oh, don't you think that there should be an independent on the stage? The biggest political party in this country, don't you think that the American people should hear from the independent candidate? Well, now, we've heard this secondhand, but from firsthand sources who are on the call. President Biden told CNN, President Biden's staff told CNN that under no conditions was I to be allowed on the stage. And CNN told the president, don't worry, because we've made criteria for qualifying for the debate, which will make sure that Robert Kennedy cannot get on the stage. And there's two principal criteria that they added to make sure that I could not qualify. One of those is that I have to be at 15% in a recent poll by one of the companies they designate. Yesterday, we sent a letter to CNN showing, and it has to be 4 polls at 15%. Yesterday, we sent a letter to CNN showing that we have 5 polls from the and we expect to be on more polls between now and June 20th, which is the last day of qualification. The other qualification they had that they were dead certain would keep me off the stage was that each of the candidates, in order to qualify to be on the stage, they have to be on enough state ballots to earn 270 electoral votes. Well, today, we have enough signatures to qualify for 201. By June 20th, we will have enough signatures to qualify for 343. And do you know who will not have enough signatures to qualify for any states? President Biden. And President Trump. And we don't know why CNN made this mistake. But we think it's because they lifted the criteria from the Presidential Commission on Debates, which always holds its debates after the convention. So it holds its debates in September. By then, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have nominees, and those nominees qualify for every state. But President Biden wanted the debate early, and so they're doing it in June. But President Biden is not the nominee of any party today. And President Trump is not the nominee of any party. So CNN is in a big dilemma today. And we were supposed to have a meeting with them this afternoon. They sent us a message saying they couldn't find the guy who was supposed to lead the meeting. This is a news organization. They're supposed to be able to find people, but they couldn't find that guy. So we're going to see what they say, but there's a FEC rule that says you can't make a deal to keep one of the candidates off the stage. So I am confident that CNN will live up to its commitment to let everybody on that stage who qualifies for that criterion. I'm willing to waive the criteria for President Biden and President Trump. Because I think it's important that the American people see their presidential candidates debate each other and are able to make up their mind based upon what happens in that debate. Based upon, our whole country is based upon the free flow of information and conversations that are annealed in the furnace of debate and that rise in the marketplace of ideas. And our politicians ought to be able to defend their records. They ought to be able to defend their ideas. They ought to be able to express their vision for this country to the American people. And do you think President Biden, why would he not want to debate me? I know it's not because he's scared, because the American people do not like cowardice in their leaders, do they? We have in this country the world's exemplary democracy. What does that mean? It means we're the example of democracy for the rest of the world. When we had the revolution in this country in 1776, we created the first democracy in the modern era. There was only one on earth. At the Civil War, by 1860, there were 6. They were all based upon the American model. By my uncle's presidency in the 1960s, there were 180 democracies. They're all based upon the model that we created in this country. They look to our Constitution. They look to our institutions. They look to our forms of representative government. They look to the freedom of the press. And we're supposed to be modeling those virtues and those institutions for the rest of the world. And that means that our democratic elections are supposed to be democratic, that people can hear information from their leaders, they can hear their opinions, they can hear the vision that they have for our country. And all of us want that, don't we? Now, I'll tell you about another poll that was issued recently. Zogby, which is one of the biggest polling houses in this country. And I'll tell you as a preliminary that the typical polls from Quinnipiac, Gallup, Harvard-Harris, New York Times, Siena, Monmouth, and all the other big companies, typically when they do a national poll, they poll from 1,200 to 2,200 people. The poll by Zogby is 26,000 people, and it's in every state. Oh, it has a margin of error that is effectively 0. What that means is anybody else who does a poll of that size will come out with the same results. And it also lets us look state by state about who will win the electoral college votes from all of the 50 states in our country. And that poll asked a question that's only been asked on 2 other polls previously, and they all turned out with the same result. They polled 2-way races, head-to-head matchups between President Biden and President Trump. They polled a head-to-head match between President Biden and President Trump with me in the race, so the 3-way race. Then they polled a head-to-head match between me and President Biden, with President Trump out of the race. And they polled a head-to-head match between me and President Trump. And here's what they found. If I stay in a 3-way race, if the election happened today, and I stay in the race, President Biden cannot win the race. He gets beaten by President Trump by about 70 electoral college votes. If I leave the race, he loses even worse. President Trump picks up 2 more states, Maine and Virginia. So if I run against President Biden, just in a head-to-head matchup, I beat President Biden 39 states to 11 states. That is a landslide. That's a landslide. If in a head-to-head race against me and President Trump, I beat President Trump. It's a nail-biter. It's only 3 electoral votes, but I still beat him. One of the reasons Zogby did this poll is because everybody was saying that I was a spoiler. Well, here's the definition of spoiler. A spoiler is somebody who cannot win the race, but who will disrupt the expectations of somebody who can. In this format, I cannot be a spoiler because I can win the race. Now, President Trump also cannot be a spoiler because he can win the race. President Biden cannot win the race. Whether I'm in it or whether I'm out of it. So who is the spoiler? Exactly. Who is it? What I've said to President Biden is that I'm willing to sign a spoiler challenge. A no spoiler challenge, which means that both of us will agree in October to take a national poll the size of the Zogby poll. And whichever one of us is least likely to beat President Trump in that poll, that person will graciously withdraw from the race. After that poll came out, they stopped calling me a spoiler because they no longer think spoilers are that bad after all. Oh, people on both sides of this race are depending, the Republicans and the Democrats are counting. Somebody told me today, in the old days, the Republicans and the Democrats were both on the 40-yard line, and they were struggling over the 20 yards in between. Today, they're both on opposite ends of the field. They're on the 2-yard line. Some of them are already past the end zone. And their attitudes, their perceptions, and that hatred is fanned because that's how political candidates triumph in this milieu. And President Trump is dependent on people. We have the 2 least popular candidates in American history. We have 70% of the American public saying they do not want to see this contest between President Trump and President Biden. They don't want to have to choose again between the lesser of 2 evils. They want to choose a candidate that they don't have to vote for out of fear. They want somebody they can vote for out of hope, out of inspiration. And President Biden and President Trump rely on our fear, just as Dell was talking about how they use fear to engineer compliance during the COVID pandemic. They're now using it to engineer compliance during this election. They're telling us, President Biden doesn't come out and say I've never heard any of his supporters, except members of my family, who, you know, if President Biden was running the Denver Marathon today, they'd put all their money on him because of his energy and his vigor. But nobody comes up, nobody else comes up and says, well, we're voting for President Biden because he's going to bring an energy and a vigor and a vigilance and cognitive acuity to this race like you've never seen in history before, or a vision for our country. They say, you gotta vote for him or Trump's gonna get elected, and it'll be the end of the republic, so you should be terrified. And President Trump says the same thing, his followers say the same thing about President Biden. They're trying to get us to vote out of fear. If you look at all of the polls show that my favorability rating is 10 points ahead of either of them. Oh. And their whole election strategy is to make sure that Americans can't vote for somebody that they like, but they have to vote out of fear. And you know, we're supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. And the reason that we're the land of the free is because we're the home of the brave. President Roosevelt told us in 1932 that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And the reason he said that is because he saw what was happening in Europe, where tyrants and totalitarian elements were using fear on the right wing and in Spain and Germany and Italy, and fear on the left wing in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, to get people to abandon their capacity for critical thinking, to abandon their idealism, and to vote for somebody out of terror that somebody else would take over. And he said, if we behave out of fear, we're going to lose our democracy. And he was able to calm the fear of the American people and rescue our republic. And today, we've got to resist the impulse and the imprecations by those leaders to vote out of fear. And over the next 5.5 months, my job, people say, what's your path to victory? I say my path to victory over the next 5 months and 18 days is to persuade Americans that they can afford to vote out of hope, out of inspiration, and that they don't need to vote out of fear. And now, President Biden and President Trump are very, very different people. Their dispositions are different, their personalities, their vision for our country is different, their ideologies, their rhetoric, the way they interact with people, the way they interact with the world, it couldn't be more different. But when you actually look at the issues that they disagree on, the only issues that you're going to see debated on the debating stage, it's a very narrow Overton window, and they're mainly culture war issues. They're abortion, it's guns, it's the border, it's a few other issues like that. They're all important issues, but they're not the existential issues, which are never talked about on the political landscapes today. And the reason they're not talked about is because neither of these presidents has the capacity to address those challenges. And let me talk to you about a few of them. One is the budget deficit and the national debt, which is, you know, President Trump said that he was going to balance the budget. Today, our national debt is $34 trillion. We pay more each year to service that debt than we do for our military budget. Within 5 years, 50 cents out of every dollar that we collect in taxes is going to go to servicing the debt. Within 10 years, 100% of every dollar we spend in taxes is going to service the debt. This is existential. It is the destruction of America. If we let that happen, you will never hear President Trump or President Biden talk about how they're going to deal with this issue. It's existential. President Trump promised he was going to balance the budget, and then he ran up the biggest deficit in American history. He ran up $8 trillion in debt, which is more than any president, than all the presidents in American history combined, from George Washington to George W. Bush, 283 years of democracy. And President Biden is now racing to catch up. In the last 100 days, the budget deficit we've added $1 trillion, and it's accelerating. We've got to stop it. We've got to bring it to an end. And that's what's driving the inflationary spiral that we're living in today, the $4 milk, the $4 bread, the $6 gasoline. This is what's driving it, and neither of them have the capacity to deal with that issue because they created the problem in 4 short years, $8 trillion. If we give them another 4 years, either one of them, we're going to see more of the same, aren't we? Oh, do you want more of the same? If you elect me president, everything's going to change. There's not going to be anything. Another existential issue are the constitutional issues, the protection of our Constitution. We saw our Constitution come under assault over the past 3.5 years. We saw free speech for the first time, and I've won lawsuits on this against the Biden administration. We saw for the first time government threatening and cajoling media and social media to censor political speech by the American people. We saw every church in this country shut down for a year with no scientific citation, no notice and comment rulemaking, no process, no public hearings, just somebody saying shut them all down. We saw that jury trials abolished, the 7th Amendment guarantee of jury trials abolished. Or any corporation that harms you that has to do with a countermeasure, you no longer get a jury trial. We're guaranteed that. The 7th Amendment says no American shall be denied the right of a trial before a jury of his peers in cases or controversies exceeding $25. There's no pandemic exception, and yet they abolished it. They shut down 3.3 million businesses in this country with no scientific citation, no public hearings, no environmental impact statement, nothing. Without due process, without just compensation, in violation of the 5th Amendment. They got rid of the prohibitions for warrantless searches and seizures with all this notice and comment rulemaking. These are the two presidents. For 500 days, they locked down our society. President Trump came into office saying, I'm going to run America like a business. Everybody's going to make money. And then he gave the keys to all of our businesses to a 50-year bureaucrat who had never been elected to anything and who had no accountability. And there's been no apology. There's been no remorse. There's just been, we made everything work. Let's not forget what happened. Let's make sure that we elect a president who is never going to allow that to happen again. These were the two presidents who presided over the chronic disease epidemic. Have you ever heard either of them talking about this, the biggest crisis we face? When my uncle was president, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, it's 60%. Neurological disorders, autoimmune diseases, food allergies, anaphylaxis, eczema, asthma, obesity, which have exploded, and particularly over the past 10 years. These presidents had a lot of time to do something about it. And it's an easy problem to fix. There's no other nation in the world that has this level. During COVID, we have the highest chronic disease burden in the world, by far. During COVID, we had 16% of the COVID deaths. We only have 4.2% of the world's population. Why are people getting awards for this, for the management of COVID? We literally had the worst record under these two presidents of any nation on earth, the highest body counts. CDC said, well, it's not our fault. It's because Americans are so sick. Think about that. CDC said the average American who died from COVID had 3.8 chronic diseases. They had asthma, they had obesity, they had diabetes, and they had one other thing. And that's what killed them. So, but why isn't anybody talking about that? Why aren't we doing anything about it? Do you want a president who's thinking about these issues? Do you want a president who's going to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country? Do any of you think President Biden and President Trump are going to do that? No. Of course they're not. Aren't you worried about AI? Aren't you worried about, Elon Musk said first it's going to steal our jobs, then it's going to kill us. He was not joking. We need a president who's thinking about it. We now have the intelligence agencies. This is existential, and particularly with the lowered boundaries on our Bill of Rights. This is existential. They have the intelligence agencies in our country. Everybody's worried about the Chinese mining our information, scraping our information from TikTok. Well, we have all the intelligence agencies, including the CIA, scraping all of our information from Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google. What do you worry about more? If there's an abuser outside of your house, of course you're worried about it. But isn't it a lot worse when the abuser is inside your house? And they have a capacity to manipulate us, to warp our reality, to distort all of our perceptions of the globe. That is what they already have. We need a president who's thinking about it and thinking about it thoughtfully. Because you can't just ban AI. You can't even overregulate it because it will chase it out of our country. We want to keep it here. We need to be sitting down with other world leaders, with people like President Xi and President Putin and President Ahmadinejad, or the Prime Minister, all the people. We can't afford to be at war anymore. We have to fight for the salvation of humanity. And speaking of war, President Biden has never seen a war that he doesn't like. President Trump had great rhetoric. He said he was going to unravel the war machine. Then he brought John Bolton in to run NSA. He appointed a swamp creature to drain the swamp. And 2 weeks ago, he voted in this $65 billion, he gave a bear hug to Speaker Johnson and to President Biden. And they colluded to send another $65 billion to Ukraine. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think we could have used that $65 billion right here in the United States? Don't you think we should be using that money to rebuild our businesses in this country, to rebuild our industrial base, to rebuild our infrastructure? Instead of investing in bombs and destroying ports and roads and schools, don't you think we should be building those things right here in America? When you invest in a bomb, it is an orphan investment because it doesn't create any more wealth, it destroys wealth. We cannot cut our way out of this budget disaster, this deficit disaster. We cannot cut our way out of it. We have to figure out a way to develop new industries in this country, and these are going to be local industries. To restore there are going to be small businesses which have been under attack in the past 35 years. We need to start rebuilding the middle class in this country. We need to get Americans into houses. Wouldn't you rather spend that $65 billion getting child care for every American, making Social Security solvent, making our education system the best education system in the world? We need that money here. We can no longer afford to be the policeman of the world. And I'm not an isolationist. I believe, like my uncle, President Kennedy, did, that the primary job of an American president is to keep the country out of war. But that doesn't mean withdrawing our international leadership or from international affairs. It means that now we do what my uncle did and what the Chinese are now doing, which is to project economic power abroad rather than military power. We spent $8 trillion over the past 20 years bombing bridges and ports and schools and universities and hospitals and airports. The Chinese, during that same period, spent $8 trillion building those things. And as a result today, they are the biggest creditor nation in virtually every nation in Latin America, almost all the nations in Africa, and many in Asia. And they have friends all over the world. They've created BRICS, which we really created, which is now threatening to destroy the leadership of the American dollar as the world reserve currency, which will devastate our economy even worse than the Great Depression. And that's what this investment in the war machine has gotten us. We need to invest abroad. We need to project economic power rather than military power. I'm not scared of competing with the Chinese on an economic landscape. And then finally, because I'm running out of time, not because I'm running out of ideas or things to say, finally, both President Trump and President Biden talk about the polarization in our country and how bad it is, and how this toxic division in our country, this rancor, the vitriol, the anger, is driving Americans apart in the worst division since the American Civil War. And how they're at the end of this, and it's all amplified by these social media algorithms that feed on division and fortify our worldviews to keep us farther, to get us farther and farther apart. You look at this and you say, what's going to happen? And everybody who looks at this seriously says, this can only end in civil war unless somebody does something about it. And that's why I stepped into this race. I promise, when I announced a year ago in Boston that I was not going to feed into the rancor and I was not going to feed into the vitriol, that I was going to identify the values that Americans share in common, rather than focusing on these culture war issues that keep us all apart. And what I found over the past 12 months wandering this country, every corner of this country, is that those things that unite Americans are so much larger than the things that divide us. Everybody wants us to have the best schools in the world and the best education for our children. Everybody wants to take care of our veterans. Nobody likes it that veterans' wives and their spouses and their families are eating at soup kitchens, that they're struggling. 3 million families are struggling with PTSD in their families. That we need to take care of our veterans. Everybody agrees on that. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees that we want to take care of our environment. If you want to divide Americans, just talk about climate change and that's it. If you want to bring them together, talk about clean water, clean air, protecting habitat. Getting us a healthy food supply, getting rid of the big ag and the food processors who have turned our food supply into commodities, from food into commodities that are poisoning us. I saw, yesterday I was in the car and I was looking at the food pyramid. The food pyramid that is issued by the United States government. It's what we're supposed to eat. Do you know what the top category in the food pyramid is? Fruit Loops. Do you think that's making you healthy? No. So we need to change the way that we look at agriculture. We need to protect our soils. We need regenerative agriculture, and everybody in this country loves those things. That's what they want. And, how many people here believe that President Trump and President Biden can end this division? Isn't it inconceivable? They both feed on the division. They both feed on the anger. They both feed on the hatred, telling us all to hate on each other. Don't you want a president who's going to try to bring us together? Don't you want a president who's going to make Americans forget that they're Democrats and forget that they're Republicans and remember that we are all Americans? And that's why you're here today, and I'm going to do that for this country. I said back when I announced, I said, I can do this. I can fix our government. If I get elected, everything's going to change. I'm going to unravel this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that has put our agencies, turned them into subsidiaries. Or the companies that they're supposed to regulate made them sock puppets for the industries they're supposed to be guarding us against. They're no longer concerned with American welfare. Their chief concern is advancing the mercantile interests of these big companies that they're supposed to be regulating. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to change that. I'm going to unravel that corporate capture. I cannot do it alone. I need an army. I need your help. Will you give me that help? And I said this last year, if you give me a sword and some ground to stand on, I will win your country back for you. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all very, very much.